That's three, and that's victory.
Oxblogger. Now then, you are this international man of mystery. Your blog has entertained, intrigued, and amused us for many, 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 many years now. But I don't feel that we know you. Okay, it's full disclosure. I've sent you some of these questions in advance so we can do a little bit of preparation. But I'm doing what I think is a service to Oxford United fans here and asking questions so we get to know you a little bit more. Are you happy to take the 21 question challenge?
Yes. Come on, give me the 21.
Right then. First question, a memory from your first game.
Okay, so my first game, my official first game, I was 3 years old, and it was a game against Southampton at the Manor. And as a 3-year-old, I don't think I remember any of it in truth, but my dad describes it that in my head, the way it's kind of panned out in my head since over the years is that I was surrounded by almost characters from like a Lowry painting, so it's kind of matchstick men and in big top hats and stuff like that, and I was kind of stood by their stood at their ankles. But apparently the abiding memory of that particular game, which is only abiding because my dad keeps telling me about it, is that I cheered every time I saw the ball, and I was more excited about the floodlights than the actual game itself. We lost 2-1 to Southampton, and Mick Tate scored apparently. So that was my official first game.
The most unlikely game you've attended, the one that people wouldn't believe you were there at, your badge of honour game.
Okay. So I went to Billy Hamilton's testimonial, which was played at walking pace, and I think we left at half time. So that was I think it was Oxford against Northern Ireland at the Manor, and I watched that game. It's kind of difficult. I mean, I flew back from Boston, Massachusetts to a game against Wolves back in the early 2000s. That was I literally was at Logan Airport and drove back from Heathrow, went straight to the Manor. And
had you planned your entire flight to arrive in time to make that possible?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, everything was meticulously planned. But I did that. I once saw a pre-season friendly at Tame, which must have been the second season in the first division, and we were basically playing our Milk Cup winning team. We're playing against Tame United. I don't know. Unlikely games are difficult.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We'll move on. Time machine. You can go back and relive one Oxford moment.
I think there's something about living through moments before the big explosion, and the Milk Cup final runs of 83 and 84. So when we played Manchester United, Leeds, Newcastle.
I'm just going to play some of the action. Here's the Newcastle game.
The first goal came after an excellent move. Thomas again, the instigator. Brock on the left here. And as he goes through, Neil Watmore, back from injury, is very thankful to put the ball in the net and Oxford in front. The second goal, again set up by McDonald. Brock on the ball once more. Thomas gets involved here, and he skips around two men before giving Thomas no chance in the Newcastle goal, and Oxford are 2 ahead.
That's the thing to remember about this Newcastle team, is that Kevin Keegan was playing, Beardsley, Chris Waddle. I mean, it was a heck of a Newcastle side. And then we played Manchester United. Who's this?
This is the so we played at Man United. Went over about 5 different replays, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it went to a second replay.
Steve Biggins has come on as substitute and scored what may well.
But that period, and we seem to be playing a Milk Cup game every 2 or 3 days by that point, and we were just so exciting. And George Lawrence was one of my favourite players of all time. So and he was in his pomp. There was nothing more exciting than watching George Lawrence going down the right wing in front of the beach road. There was just that kind of sense of anticipation as he kind of marauded through the defence. So I think if I could, just to be able to absorb the sort of scale of what we were achieving, I think that would be the period that I would like to go back to.
A game you weren't at, but wish you were.
So I think above all, the game that I really wish I was at, but couldn't get to. I actually didn't even realise was the enormity of kind of what was going on at the time, was the Tranmere game in '92, where everything was going against us, and we were relying on results elsewhere to stay up. I think I was at university at the time and didn't really kind of, I think I'd probably given up on us by this point, and so didn't feel any inclination to head up to Tranmere to watch us go down. But this game's just gone down in folklore, and in particular kind of Joey Beecham's performance, I think, is just one of those, you know, it's easy to go to the games where success is, if not guaranteed, but fairly certain. But this was all set up to be a pretty miserable day, and turned out to be an absolute barnstormer. So this is the game. If I was able to transport to one game, it would definitely be this one. But there are a few others. Is this where John Aldridge? This is John Aldridge scoring.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
scoring his 150th goal of that season or something, and being, you know, doing that whole thing of not celebrating.
Unbelievable day. I wasn't there either. I was working that day. I was working in the shop at the time and had to work weekends. So yeah, alas, one that I missed.
This is a story I would love to tell on the blog in some detail, because I think in some ways it's just one of those that is really very much in the hands of those who went to the game. It's kind of known, but it's not that well known. So yeah, I would love to do this one.
I did the other blog, the one that we're not mentioning anymore. And we obviously had Brian Horton as the guest, and obviously we talked about this whole season. And when it's interesting how little he remembered about the whole season. I guess, you know, here's a guy who's managed, you know, hundreds of seasons for various different clubs. But when we kind of prompted him, when he saw the bits of video, you could see his kind of brain coming back and remembering different things.
It is one of those things, isn't it, that there's fewer and fewer people who well, firstly were there, and secondly will remember it particularly. But it's definitely not one to lose. I love the footage as well that is available on YouTube, you know, of the fans arriving, and you know, it's just kind of cast me back to not a happier time, but you know, I look back with a lot of fondness to that time. So
tell us about this game then.
This was one of my great lost games. So I was at university at the time. This is we're playing Leeds in the FA Cup in '93, and I was a member. I didn't have a season ticket, but I was a member. And of course, you couldn't buy the tickets online, so you had to phone up. And for some reason, I decided to leave it a couple of days to buy a ticket. And when I did phone up, they'd all gone. And it was a fantastic game. We went 2-up, and then they came back. But I just feel that's the one that got away. I actually came home just to be near the ground when this game was on, just because it was the best I could do, because I just couldn't get a ticket. So that's a game I would just love to have been at, just because I just still kick myself for not acting quickly enough to get the ticket.
So I also missed out on getting a ticket for this game, and this was my first ever career blag. Anyone who knows me knows I'm quite a good blagger at things. I blagged a ticket for this game. It's for a friend of mine who was working in the shop I was working at the time, and he happened to have a friend who worked for, I think it was LBC. I can't remember which radio station it was, but basically my mate asked his mate to phone up the club and get me a ticket in the press box as a reporter for LBC. And I went along and literally just sat in the press box. And I remember I was sitting next to Patrick Barclay, who was like, you know, the big sports writer of whichever newspaper it was, the Telegraph or whatever. And as we went 2-0 up, I jumped out of the seat and went, yeah, come on. And he said, you're not a journalist, are you? And I said, no, I'm not. And he said, yeah, I can tell. He said, enjoy the game. And he didn't grasp me up. So that was my first ever blag.
Cards, you know, in the hat, you know, just to try and prove that you are press. Pencil behind your ear.
And then, of course, the replay.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't. Again, I would love to have gone to this one, but it was. I think I'd kind of assumed that we'd go out, and just didn't even give it a second thought to go to it. And again, I think it's all about really how you used to consume this stuff in the past. I was in London, so you weren't getting Radio Oxford, so there was no commentary. You would just get goal alerts. And we went 2-up, as you can see here, which was amazing in itself. And they just sort of they were being kind of announced as other games were going on. I think there was a commentary for another game going on, and they were just being announced, which was pretty amazing. And I thought we'd done it, and the commentary that was on the radio finished, and they were just going through the final scores, and it was 2-2, and I just didn't know what had happened. And the show just kind of then went on, and then another goal alert that Jim Magilton had scored, and I just feel it was just slightly out of range, and I regret that.
I didn't go to this one, but I remember listening to it on the radio. It must have been Radio 2 or Radio, would it have been early days Radio 5? I can't remember around then. I was listening to it on the radio. They've been covering another match, and then they said, we're going over to Ellen Road for the last minutes of the game where Oxford are 2-0 up against Leeds United, one of the big shots of the night. And then, it's a goal for Strachan, 2-1. Leeds are back in it. Can they pull something off with a couple of minutes left? And then literally like deep into injury times. Was it Strachan again? I can't remember who got the second one. But yeah, it was 2-2. And I was so angry. I booted my bed in rage and broke my foot. So, so yeah. And then Magilton scored that wonderful goal. And then what happened to Jim Magilton?
He within 24 hours, he had gone to Southampton, I think. There is an interview with him somewhere of talking about how great it was to score the winner. And he must have left that interview and walked straight, got into the car and drove down to the Dell, because he was a Southampton player within hours.
I edited that off. I might snip it back in when we do the final edit, because it's very, very funny. There is great bunch of lads, looking forward to the rest of the season. Oh, by the way, I'm off. Finally, what a game this was. Go on, what's this one?
Again, I think these are games where you've got to applaud the fans who come to these. So this is the penultimate game of the '96 season, and we're on a pretty remarkable run, which is worthy of an episode all on its own. But we were still really, even at this stage, thinking about playoffs rather than promotion, and the stories of Oxford fans filling the we were at Crewe and filling Gresty Road hours before kickoff on all four sides of the stands of the stadium. And of course we won, and Blackpool, who were capitulating at the time, lost, which meant that suddenly promotion was in our hands. And it's just one of those where 99 times out of 100, you go up to that game, you might have won, but Blackpool would have won, and that final game would have been out of our hands. But it was just one which pivoted that whole season into one which was, we might have an outside chance of the playoffs, into we're going up with automatic, we've got automatic promotion. And again, I just wish I'd taken a punt on it, and I hadn't. So it's always worth going to these games just as an outside chance that you'll be rewarded.
Just to really rub your nose in it, I did go to this game. I was living in Hull at the time, and I went to probably only 6 or 7 games that season because I was at university and skint. But all the games I went to were in the north of England, of which I include Crewe. Is Crewe in the north? It feels north. Yeah. I went to Crewe and got there incredibly early, and was one of the last people to be let into the away end. And already kind of Oxford fans were filling up kind of the rest of the ground. And it was the greatest game of football I have ever seen in all my life. When you ask, when I do this quiz, this is my favourite game of all time. The drama was unbelievable. It was Moody and Beecham got the goals, wasn't it? I think so. 2 of my favourite players got the goals. My abiding memory, though, is the incredible coolness of Phil Whitehead, because it's not in the highlights, and that's always annoyed me. With about 5-10 minutes left, Crewe get a free kick on the edge of the area, and the guy steps up and curls it straight into the top corner to make it 2-2. And Phil Whitehead just watches it go in, and obviously all the Crewe fans are up, laughing at us, going, "Oh, you messed it up." But the referee had his arm up the whole time. It's an indirect free kick. And Phil Whitehead just stood there and watched it go in. And it is unbelievable. Fancy being that cool to just let it go in. Right? It was unbelievable. A brilliant game of football. I'm sorry you weren't there.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one that I would like to be transported back to.
A game you were at, but wish you weren't.
So one of the things that is that actually there aren't many games that defeats are part of being a football fan. That's why we do it. Otherwise we go to the cinema, because the endings will always be good ones. So defeats aren't a reason not to be at a game. There was a game in the 2006 season against Darlington.
Oh, by chance I found this.
Oh no, really? So I was late to this game. I mean, the game itself is fairly meaningless. We lose 2-0 and it was miserable. And it is in the season that we were relegated to the conference. But my personal journey was I was late for the game, and I normally park quite away from the stadium and walk up to it. And as I drove in, I just didn't have the energy. And so I thought, I'll see if I can get into the car park, and I'll sit in the car park, on the way out, and I'll just take the hit on that. Because I just couldn't be bothered to go to the game. And I drove into the car park, and this must have been about 15 minutes before kickoff. And the car park was half empty. And I parked on the first row outside the East Stand and just watched people going into the stadium, thinking, why? What am I doing this for? This is completely miserable and pointless. I think there was about 4,000 fans there or something like that. It was the week before, and the vlog that we will not mention, you touched on this during the brilliant relegation episode, that it was the week before the away game at Rushden, which I think was considered to be quite a pivotal game in terms of mindset, that we were in some serious trouble of going down. And I had that crisis the week before against Darlington. So this was just the most miserable experience. But it was a very personal thing, most people wouldn't remember this game. But for me, it was a game I would quite happily have turned around and gone home from without going to. And I was rewarded with a 2-0 defeat.
By bloody Darlington. A match you knew we'd win.
Okay, so I'm not a massively confident person in terms of this sort of stuff. I don't have all this hubris that we'll win all the time, but I can't see us losing very often. Unless we're playing a Man City or somebody like that. I can't imagine. I guess this is why you keep going back to games, even when you're, even when things aren't going well, is that you kind of forget the feeling of losing. So you can't. So your body goes, we can't lose because I don't know how to feel about losing. But the game I genuinely thought we were going to win was the game against Leyton Orient in 2006. I was convinced we would win this.
Luckily, we do 2-0. I've just got the 2 goals here.
Yeah,
that's remarkable. We stayed up that day thanks to this victory.
Oh dear. No. I mean, so the run up to that, if I remember rightly, there was 6 or 7 teams who were within 3 points of the bottom 2, and we were at the bottom of there. But then 2 of those teams were playing each other, so we just had to win it. And I thought, well, we're at home, everything's going to be with us, the momentum's going to be with us. We don't lose, we can't lose. We'll just. This is going to be one of those glorious moments. This is going to be the home version of Tranmere. And it didn't turn out exactly. I mean, obviously it's the 2-0 win here, but but it almost came as a bit of a shock that we lost. I just didn't think we would screw it up. It was, survival was given to us on a plate, and we just didn't deserve it. And yet, yeah, we lost, and that, I mean, as well as relegation, the actual, just the fact we lost a game we just shouldn't have lost, I was convinced we would win, was part of the shock. Yeah, extraordinary.
And a significant day for you for other reasons as well.
Yeah, well, my daughter had been born at 9 o'clock that morning, so I'd been up all night. In fact, I'd been up for the best part of 48 hours. My daughter was born at 9, and because she was born cesarean section, basically the hospital go, you're not important anymore. What's important is that we look after the baby and the mum, so you can go home. And this was about 10:30, 11 o'clock. No, it would have been, it would have been about that sort of time. And I think it was my mum. I asked my mum to bring my season ticket over because just going home seemed like a daft thing to do. And so she brought the season ticket over, and I drove straight to the game. I pulled out of the John Radcliffe, and my wing mirror clipped a wing mirror of a car parked down the road, and I carried on driving. Maybe don't put that in.
That's my wing mirror.
But I arrived about 10-15 minutes late, and it was just the overload, the kind of sensory overload of that game, because it was like no other game I've ever been to in terms of the nervous energy, anger, frustration, and I turned up with no sleep for 48 hours, and then watched it, and it just blew me away. In many ways, it was one of the best games I've ever been to, because I've never been to a game like it, despite the outcome.
2-0 win. I guess you kind of answered that. Is the most nervous you've been?
The York game at the playoff final, the conference playoff final at Wembley. 45 minutes of just wanting to kind of lie in the fetal position, because it just felt like we'd just thrown it away, and just that sort of feeling of just not wanting to be there, but also not wanting to leave. That was a pretty grim feeling. And then Alfie Bottas scores, and we forget everything. So,
biggest disappointment.
So I think probably the game against Exeter in 2007, first season in the conference. We'd had a pretty torrid season, started very well and then kind of petered off, but we were always likely to be in the playoffs, and we'd had a good first leg at Exeter, and I thought we I thought we had enough. We were 2-1 up. It was, I can't remember what the first leg was. Oh,
we won 1-0 the first leg, and then went 1-0 up in the second.
That's right, against the runner player, if I remember rightly.
I remember our fans singing at this point, one shot and we're 2-0 up, which I thought was quite funny. But
yeah. And that game, and then, but it was evident that we weren't on the. Oh dear, Rob Duffy.
Isn't it funny how memory plays tricks? I remember that being an injury time, sorry, in extra time, but it wasn't. It was in the first half, I think, or second half. Yeah. Oh.
But I just thought we had enough to just get us through, and I thought if we got to Wembley, we would have got through. And it just, everything kind of played against us. Oh dear me. Just an awful feeling that, I think a lot of fans had thought we're going to do this for a season, we're going to bounce back, and then we'll reset ourselves and we'll be back to normal. And just that feeling of that realization that we'd screwed it up, and that we had another season in the conference, and that that it had all been in our hands and we'd just given up on it, which is awful.
I've got an interesting anecdote about that game. I was in the tunnel there. I was somewhere kind of just by that doorway there. I don't know if you can see my cursor.
Yeah.
And I was filming at the time for the BBC. We were doing a kind of behind the scenes documentary type thing for the BBC website. It's only kind of short little films throughout the season. I wasn't really meant to be filming this game for rights reasons. It's a Sky match, and if it's Sky have paid big money for it, well, not big money, but if Sky paid for it, then it's their match. So I wasn't really meant to be filming, but I was just trying to kind of get as much as I could without Sky telling me off. And I was in the tunnel, and I looked over. I'm not going to mention the players' names, but one of our tougher, more kind of celebrated hard men of the team, and I looked into his eyes, and he'd gone. He was absolutely finished. I could tell straight away. The extra guys were up for it, ready for it, and totally focused. And this player had gone. He'd totally gone. And I knew at that point that we'd lost. If this guy had gone, the whole team was going to go. And he'd gone. He'd totally, utterly gone. And I was there. As the penalties were being taken, I sneaked down. I'm not sure if you can see me or not. I was literally kind of down by those guys in the, you see the guys there with the high vis. I was somewhere there kind of filming. I think I was pointing my camera at the crowd. Right. And yeah, it's just the most kind of agonizing disaster unfolding slowly in front of your eyes.
I think it was that sense of helplessness, of that sudden realization that we were so far away from the momentum that I think we thought we had, that it was just a sense of helplessness. And the game just seemed to go on for weeks. We just seemed to be in the stands for days and days and days. And I remember I spoke to a friend just before the game. We kind of met up, and then they were sitting in a different part of the stand, and their parting line was, well, if we can't win from being a goal up after the away leg, then we don't deserve to go to Wembley. And that was it was so true. It was just that rang through my head constantly. It was that we just don't deserve it. And it was, just so disappointing.
The closest you've come to packing it all in.
So, that's a pretty easy one, actually. The end of the Michael Appleton first season, I had enough by that point. We'd had it had been pretty awful under Michael Appleton. I'd seen false dawns before. There was a lot of skepticism around that takeover that had happened the year before. There was a lot of skepticism around Michael Appleton himself. There were people who had said, we've talked to people around the club, we've talked to Appleton, and their heart's in the right place, and they're doing all the right things, but it just wasn't coming through. And in addition to that, it was you know, it was, yeah, but we've been doing this for 15 years now, like this, you know, this new false dawn, this new manager, new owner, new whatever. And I actually said to myself, maybe I could just become a Glory supporter and just come to the big games. Why do I have to go to all the bad games as well? There's no real kind of kudos in that. And so I then gave myself one more season to kind of, you know, it was make or break, which happened to be the 2015-2016 season, which was, I think, probably my favourite season as an Oxford fan. So that season did actually save me. I was very close to walking away. I've had relationship, you know, the early 90s. I didn't get to many games because of university, and you know, the relationship was kind of more distant. But that was the time where I thought, I'll just come to the big games. You know, like all the Glory fans, that, you know, nobody knows that I'm a Glory fan if I just turn up to all the big games. But yeah, but I was saved by the 2015-2016 season.
What a season it was.
Yeah.
Cult hero.
So when you say cult hero, are we talking about a unlikely hero?
Answer it anyhow you want.
I mean, Joey Beecham is the cult hero's cult hero, isn't he? I mean, the local boy, as good as any player in England at the time, at his height, broadly stayed loyal to us, and all that kind of stuff. And it's really difficult to look beyond him as the club hero. He's the Roy Race, you know, the Roy of the Rovers of Oxford United. So definitely him.
An irrational hatred of
Luton Town.
Don't need to say anything else. An irrational love of.
Well, as I say, kind of those players that took a lot of heat. People like Steve Anthrobus. I think, you know, I can't say I love him, but I kind of appreciate the fact that they come and they put in the effort, even if they don't get the results they want.
How many of his goals did you see, Anthrobus? I've got a friend who claims to have seen all 4. John Brown, if you're listening.
Well, well, I wasn't at the Stoke game, which I think is when he scored. Didn't he score on his debut?
He did.
Yeah.
He did, yeah. Absolutely brilliant goal as well. Like,
yeah, I remember.
Sensational header.
I remember Oxford Mail making a really big deal that we had this strike partnership of Anthrobus and Lilly that was just going to tear everything up, and here was the proof. I don't think they scored again for 6 months. Yeah, I mean, let's go for Steve Anthrobus on that. It's not rational, that's for sure.
Best Oxford United goal you've ever seen live?
So the one that everybody will talk about and I saw was Joe Beecham's goal against Blackpool. I mean, it just had everything. I mean, the technique above everything is just phenomenal. The way he wraps his foot around the ball. But what I do remember about it, my dad used to talk about goals being scored where there was this pause in the crowd of this sense of disbelief of what they've just seen, and actually got that. I've had it twice as an Oxford fan. Once was a James Constable goal against Wrexham in the last minute, and the other one was this. There seemed to be this pause as people were just kind of craning their necks to see. That went in, didn't it? That actually just went in, because the goalkeeper was Eric Nixon, who was actually in goal for the game against Tranmere as well. So Beecham, Nixon, but Nixon was one of the best keepers in the division. Blackpool were a really good side. It had been a really tense game, and then Beecham just unleashed this shot that just, as I say, just the whole stadium for a split second just stopped, just to check what we'd seen was real. Just brilliant.
Best Oxford United goal not seen live?
Well, the one I kind of wish I really had seen is Tony Martinez's goal against Middlesbrough in the FA Cup. Just the folklore around it is just fantastic, and you can see amongst the Oxford fans. If you often see fans nowadays, you know, with the phones out filming themselves, and there was just you know, people had just lost their minds. And
I don't think you can show that goal without showing the previous kind of 40 seconds. So I'm starting the action here. So this is Maguire's free kick.
Which is a wonderful free kick on its own. I think this is one of the things about this is I can't remember us scoring 2 in a minute before, for a long time anyway. But that, I mean, just the sense of momentum that we had at that point. And I'd gone out to the shops or something. We were 2 down.
Why weren't you there? Why weren't you there?
I'll tell you why. Because I have a bit of a thing about the round after a giant killing. We've beaten Newcastle the round before. And it's always a massive disappointment after a giant killing. You know, you think that you're invincible and then suddenly you find out that you're not. And because Middlesbrough was so far away, I kind of thought this is just going to be one of these kind of routine FA Cup exits. It's a long way to go for you know, routine 2-0 defeat, which was, a terrible error of judgment.
If one Oxford United moment could magically appear on YouTube, what would it be?
So I think there's 2. Well, there's possibly 3. One will definitely, I'm pretty sure, will never appear, which is Oxford United's appearance on Jim Will Fix It, when just after we played Arsenal in the League Cup. I think that there was a kid who wanted to be the referee and send off an entire team, and they reran Oxford versus Arsenal, and so that he could send off. And I think he was an Arsenal fan, so I think he sent off the entire Oxford team. That was kind of his dream, and amazingly, that hasn't appeared on YouTube. But in 1982 we beat Brighton in the FA Cup, and it's a kind of long forgotten FA Cup giant killing, and it's significant for me because it was around the time that I'd started going regularly with my dad, and I just had no sense of us in and I mean I remember that program, you know, I've got that program somewhere. It's just we were apparently absolutely brilliant, and I'm pretty sure there's no footage of it. You know, it was before the days where they filmed everything, and so that's and that was the first giant killing and goal, you know, win of significance, I suppose, when I was a kind of regular Oxford fan. And then the round after that, we played Coventry at Highfield, and we went. And although we lost 4-0, and I think there is film of this somewhere, because there are photos knocking around of that game. And I don't even remember, but back then, Coventry used to have a kit which was the Talbot Cars logo, kind of all the way, like the whole kit was a logo. And as a result, because they didn't allow advertising on TV, that they couldn't wear that kit when they were on TV. So they used to wear this kind of just this sky blue kit, which was their TV kit. And they wore it that day against Oxford at Highfield. And it was my first proper away game in an away end. And we lost 4-0. We played pretty well. There was apocalyptic levels of crowd trouble. And quite a lot of people that I still see today at games thinking, I saw you throwing seats on the pitch in 1982. So I would love to be able to see those games again. I would love to see. I never saw the goals, obviously, for the Brighton game because they were never filmed. But if that appeared, I would just be brilliant.
What's the best YouTube find you found?
So this is actually something that I'd been looking for. It's not often you stumble across things from time to time, but the thing that I had been looking for and then found was us winning the I think it's the Guinness Six-a-Side Cup in 86, 85, 86.
It was the year after the Milk Cup. So this was like our 4th consecutive trophy by my reckoning.
Well, this was it. So what I remember about that was that by this point we were winning trophies all the time, and I was starting to get complacent about it. It was Graham Ricks. And I was getting complacent about it. And then I just assumed we were doing a trophy every season. And then I remember this being on Sports Night, which was the BBC late night sports show, midweek sports show, and being allowed to stay up watch it. And we beat Arsenal in the final. And that, as you say, that was our piece of silverware. Tommy Caton as well. He was a former Oxford player.
I remember watching this on Sports Night as well, and just being so excited by it. Well, I mean, what a brilliant thing! I guess this was because there's no teams in Europe at the time, right? So there's just been like, anything for a bit of money and a bit of exposure, I guess.
I think that's it. I think it was, if you look at the teams who were playing, the players who were playing, they were playing first team football. You just wouldn't get it nowadays. And they're doing it for the appearance fees, I guess, and the clubs are doing it for the money.
I propose we do a watch along one day of this.
Yeah, it's the full game. The full game's on YouTube. So yeah, absolutely.
In which case, no spoilers. But late drama. Let's say that much. A dinner party with 5 Oxford players, past or present.
I was asked something very similar about this back in May, and I can't remember who I selected. So I'm going to go with a fresh list. So the requirement of these people is that they will not keep anything a secret. And so I want that they would tell all the stories. There would be no, they're not holding anything back, and they would all be really eloquent and engaging in doing it. They've got to be good storytellers. So I'm assuming that all of these people are storytellers, and that they would have to be kind of spread across the whole time I've been supporting the club. So I would go Gary Briggs, because his story alone, is just, I think he was with us from 1978, and then got to Wembley. That couldn't have been on his plan, and I'd love to know that story. The story of just being part of that. I would Matt Murphy, just because I now realise that Matt Murphy was a much better player than anybody gave him any credit for, because he was very much the go-to boo boy of the 1990s Oxford, and yet he's
going to be dull though. Matt Murphy's going to be dull, right? Here's my evidence. One, that haircut, right? He's got big fluffy hair. If you don't know what he looks like, youngsters, Google him. This man did not know what hair product was, right? So that's my first thing. Secondly, wasn't he a bank clerk originally?
Yes.
Yeah. Thirdly, he signed from Corby, which just sounds like a dull place. So those are my 3 bits of evidence to tell you that Matt Murphy is going to be dull.
So my counter to that is that when he realises that he's surrounded by friends that aren't going to judge him on his hair, that he would just unleash this kind of emotional tidal wave of what it was like being Matt Murphy during the mid 90s when we were at our peak, and then and he was also part of the squad in the 2001. So, you know, it's I reckon he's got some stories to tell, and in some senses, I'd prefer to have somebody who was almost an observer of what was going on than actually in it, because I think they'll pick up all the stories. So I'd still take Murphy. I think from present, I'd probably Sam Long, just because of, again, such an unlikely journey. Hate that phrase, but you know that it sometimes feels like the club's trying to find ways of kind of replacing him, and yet he still keeps coming through. But he straddles right through from Chris Wilder to Carl Robinson. So definitely him. Ryan Clark from the Chris Wilder years, just because Ryan Clark seems like such a nice guy, and I'd like to ask him about dropping the ball into the net against York, and whether that kind of leaves him kind of staring at the ceiling late at night, or whether, you know, you just kind of write that kind of stuff off. You know, it's just.
Maybe there was some sort of podcast somewhere that had that conversation with him.
Was there? I'm gonna have to dig it out. I mean, does that live with you for the rest of your life, or do you just go, well, it turned out all right in the end, and that's just the life of a goalkeeper? And then the fifth person, who actually isn't a player, I realise you put players, is Firoz Kassam. He's so much part of our history, and I think he's much more interesting than he's made out to be. I think his character is oversimplified in Oxford's story. I would love to know what's driving him, where his frustrations are, and yeah, I mean, the logic says that you would sell up and disappear as soon as somebody came with any money, but he's stuck in there, you know. And there's funny things. I always remember when he was owning the club, and we were on sliding, we were on our way down, and he'd park up this bright green Bentley outside the ticket office. I mean, it was asking to be damaged by frustrated Oxford fans, but I mean, he did it, you know. He would turn up to games. He didn't need to turn up to games. He invested in players, and he didn't need to do that. And yet he's still kind of much maligned. I'd love to know what's really going on with him.
An unexpected encounter with a player.
Okay. So I tend not to seek out players. I once saw Mark Angel in Gloucester Green. He was in a shell suit, which would have been a fire hazard. It was sort of classic 90s, because I'm pretty sure he was carrying a Massive Records, not a Massive Records, but you know, from Massive Records in Oxford, and a cult clothing bag as he was walking along, and his hair was in curtains. So that was I saw him once. Michael Appleton lived in Tame, which is not far from where I live, and I saw him a couple of times. I was once standing behind him in a queue at Costa Coffee one morning, and it was in that first season where I was, and I was not complimentary about him or his team on the blog, and I stood behind him, and I'm pretty sure he knew I was there. Broad shoulders, my goodness, they're absolutely enormous. But then I also saw him once in Waitrose, and I can confirm that he is absolutely meticulous about choosing the right kind of yogurt.
Which is what?
Well, the thing is, he was so I saw him looking at the vast array of yogurts that were there, and kind of sauntered past, tried to see what he was buying, and then I kind of circled back to see if he was still there about 5 minutes later, and he was still at the yogurt counter. So I actually don't know. I mean, he may still be there, trying to choose. I don't know, but that was his thing. But I guess my only real proper encounter is with, so my sister went to school with Mickey Lewis's wife, and Mickey Lewis and Suzanne, his wife, came to my sister's wedding, and so for most of the wedding, Mickey was in the bar. It was up in Tamworth, and there was quite a lot of sort of Midlands football fans who knew who Mickey was, and he sort of held court for most of the reception, except for when the bars of Baggy Trousers came on, and I was stood on the side of the dance floor as Baggy Trousers came on, that bah, 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 that bit, and I felt this brush against me as I kind of gently got pushed away, and it was Mickey Lewis on his way to the dance floor to do his 3 minutes of Baggy Trousers, and he skanked around the dance floor for 3 minutes with gusto. He was absolutely, he threw himself into it, and then at the end he stopped and walked off and went back to the bar again. And then after the wedding, as it all sort of started to peter out, there was a few of us in the bar, and this was getting late at this point. And Mickey was holding court, and his voice had become quite raspy at this point. Obviously, he was getting tired and he was drinking plenty. And he was telling us just telling us loads of stories about Oxford. And one of the party was a Wickham fan, so I set him up to talk about the 96, the Paul Moody, the Stuart Massey hanging off the crossbar Wickham game. And Mickey leapt to his feet. Well, he started telling the story, and we spanked them. We absolutely spanked them. And then he jumped up, and he jumped behind the chair that he was on, and was going, we spanked them. We were spanking and everybody was absolutely loving it. And then from somewhere in the middle distance, there was it was a wife of one of the people that was there, had sort of turns up in a dressing gown and just closed the party down because of the noise that we were making.
Something strange that's happened at a game then.
So in the cup run, actually, we were talking about earlier, where we beat Leeds, we then played Chelsea at the Manor, and I was determined to go to that game. And so I did get a ticket. I made sure I got a ticket. And because I was in London at the time, I came in on the train and completely got my timings wrong, and was stuck on a very busy bus from the station up to the Manor, surrounded by Chelsea fans.
Lovely bunch. Lovely bunch always, Chelsea fans.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were, telling hilarious stories of their plans, but they were plotting basically on how they were going to get into the ground, because unlike me, who diligently got a ticket, they didn't have tickets. And so anyway, I got into the ground, and I got into the ground just as Joe Beecham was scoring right there. I literally walked up into the stand as he was sort of marauding in to score his goal. And Chelsea then equalised. I think this is the equaliser here. And from behind me in the London Road, there was a roar of Chelsea fans. And I looked behind me, and it was the people I've been standing with on this bus. And basically then it caused a lot of problems, obviously, in the London Road. A lot of Oxford fans not very happy with a bunch of Chelsea fans being in the London Road and cheering. And so there was a lot of trouble, and the police weren't prepared to go into the stand. So it went on for quite a long time. There was a lot of trouble. And then on the way home, I queued up for the bus to go back to the station and managed to find myself with this group again. And we spent the bus journey discussing the good ruck that we'd all been involved in. So I managed to, I was an honorary member of the Chelsea hooligan firm for that particular game. I didn't throw a punch, I understand. I was just there listening to their hilarious stories of beating up people and avoiding pain and things like that. So
you're on a date. You have to wear an Oxford United shirt. Which one are you going for? I notice you're sitting in the club shop at the moment, actually, as well. So
well, oh, it's not up there. Hold on. So I'm not sure this is going to fit anymore, but this is so that's my.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I mean that's if I had one that would fit in that, then that would be probably one of them. Just
I mean, who could resist that, right? That's a guaranteed. You are onto a winner if you wear that on a date.
Yeah. So I mean that just would impress anybody. They go, wow, is that an original Spall Sports from the 83 championship, 84 championship winning side? Okay, yeah, it is. Yeah. So I think probably that one. I think it's a beauty, and I'm a little bit sad that we haven't tried to recreate it in a modern form. I think that would probably be one.
I think it's the last question. The weirdest merch that you own.
So there is a piece of merchandise that I own, which I think is probably in the loft at my parents', which is my magic Oxford t-shirt, which I bought in Christmas 1995 when we were on a bit of a dodgy run, and I bought it, and it was fantastic. It was like an Oxford shirt, but it was white with blue. It had a blue Unipart logo and a blue badge, and it had it was very Britpoppy, which of course it was Britpop time, so it was quite cool as well, and it fitted brilliantly. It was one of those t-shirts, you know, sometimes you get a t-shirt and go, that's just made for me, and it was just a great t-shirt. And I wore it for every game that we in the rest of that season, which was the season that we eventually went up in '96. So I've got a magic t-shirt, and it disappeared after we were promoted, and I never saw anybody else in this t-shirt. So that's the piece of merchandise that I would love to find. If I find it, I'll show you. But the thing I have got, which I've got here, one I prepared earlier, a bit nervous about doing it, to be honest, is this, which is signed football from 1984. And I need to be really careful because their signatures are all done in biro, so very easy to wipe off. And I keep it in this case because I'm so paranoid about wiping it. But it's a really interesting. So it was. I think it was donated by the club to a school raffle or something like that. My dad was the only person who bid for it, so we won it. So I just have to be really careful because I don't really want to put fingers on. So there's Kevin Brock on there. There is Gary Barnett. Did we mention Gary Barnett earlier?
Mentioned Gary Barnett, yeah.
People like Andy Thomas and Kevin Brock, Malcolm Shotton, Gary Briggs, people like that, alongside players that maybe that a lot of people have forgotten. We talked about Neil Watmore earlier, and you know, people like that who were still at the club but were kind of on their way out. And I absolutely love it. I'm completely paranoid that the children will have decide that they want to play football and they can't find a ball in the shed, so they'll go, oh, there's a ball up in the loft that we could use, and then I'll find it's being used there. But it's probably worthless, but it's just an amazing sort of historical piece. And I love the fact it's a Spall. It's actually made by Spall, which was the shirt manufacturers that we had at the time, and was quintessentially lower league. manufacturer. So that's my piece of merch.
I think that's the end. That is the end. that is the end of your 21 questions. I think that's been really, really interesting and brilliant, and your answers have been fascinating, and they've been really great for kind of bringing back loads of memories. So thank you for doing that.
It's good to be able to kind of trawl the archives, you know, for this sort of stuff. You kind of it's all packed away. You just have to unpack it and give it a fresh run out. This is what this is for. I think this what are we calling it? Are we calling it a vlog or a podcast? But
vlogcast. Vlogcast. Right. See you all next week then.